A few months ago, I read an article that used the band on Titanic's deck as a metaphor for the past few years, the COVID years. And to be honest, while I thought the metaphor pertaining to the act of comforting others, even when their own lives were at stake, sounded like a pretty good metaphor, I didn't realize just how deep it went. You see, this past year has felt like a sinking ship. We're desperately searching for some sort of lifeboat to escape, but there isn't one. That's because everything that's happening to me, to you, the lockdowns, the social isolation, the loneliness, and in some way the desperation to leave is happening to everybody else. It came out of nowhere too, just like the iceberg had appeared in Titanic. No one on that ship had intended to hit the iceberg that day, or they would have planned ahead, right? If we had known lockdowns would put everything on hold, then perhaps we would have been in a much better position to accept it, but we didn't have that luxury. Still, I wanted to acknowledge the difference between the student and the general experience because the student's perspective on all of this is a little bit different. And that's what brings me to the theme of being in the shadows. As a student myself, I constantly felt the need to be the best, to do the best, to set myself apart and do something no one has ever done before. And when COVID hit, everyone expected that innate competitiveness in students to die down for a few months. And to an extent, it did. I mean, every in person event was canceled, and because no one had time to plan ahead, the realm of virtual experiences was much more limited. But suddenly, in one swift motion, everybody was back on track, piecing their lives together at a pace I hadn't really anticipated. Around me, people were doing such incredible things, participating in international math Olympiads, speaking to professors at top tier schools, taking part in internship opportunities, work experiences. To me, it sounded like everybody was getting their life together, and in an attempt to do the same, I loaded myself with responsibilities that only tore at my mental and physical health. And when I say loaded, I mean loaded. You see, I took up an internship opportunity at a company based in the United States, which, as you know, operates at a different time zone than here in Asia. I also started volunteering at an international nonprofit organization whose meetings and schedules were built around that of the clients and organizations we were trying to partner with. In other words, it meant unpredictability. They would call meetings and I would have to show up to them. That meant my day started at 1 in the morning. I'd wake up, work for 4 or 5 hours, take a quick nap before school, and then proceed to sit through an 8-hour school day. My afternoons would usually be spent speeding through schoolwork before it was time for these aforementioned unpredictable meetings that lasted, from half an hour to maybe two. And this went on for 6 whole months. The reason why I'm talking about this is that even though I exuded pre-professionalism to others, top grades, working as a high school student in an internship filled with only undergrads and postgrads, volunteering and making a difference in society, even with all that, I was empty inside. I was sleep deprived, exhausted, and losing touch with everything and everyone that I loved. All of my struggles were in the shadows. So this is actually the concept of toxic positivity. It was the constant need to maintain this happy, optimistic facade across all situations when I felt everything but inside. It was tearing at me, and I didn't know how to express that because I thought I should be appreciative of these opportunities. I should be making the most of them, but it just didn't resonate. And especially as an IB student, there are just so many points of stress that this is actually a very regular occurrence. We sometimes fool ourselves into thinking that overworking ourselves and pushing ourselves to the edge is the right mentality, is what we should be doing as students. And every time we rest, we feel guilty that we aren't doing enough. That society should applaud us for being so dedicated that we don't care for any other aspect of our life, but this dedication or I guess obsession with our education. But we all know that our stresses aren't even just limited to our academic successes. There are social aspects, familial aspects, and really every other aspect of our biological, cognitive, and social cultural factors blending in together into this giant ball of stress. So fast forward to early 2021. It's a few months before we celebrate our first full year in lockdown. Can you believe that? I look in the mirror and I see how much I've deteriorated. I look unhealthy, and my brain isn't even functioning well enough to get through the day. It's weird, right? How changes you undergo are unnoticeable between days, but when you compare yourself now to what you were a year or two ago, you start to notice how your lifestyle, how what you've done every day in the past year has affected what you've become. The mental agony that used to hide behind the shadows was perfectly visible, and it manifested in a pale, almost zombie like appearance, eyelids sullen, eye bags large, and a big slouch. I wasn't happy with what I saw. And this was a crucial point because it was the point where I decided that it needed to change. All of my commitments ended soon after. And instead of replacing it with more work, which I would have done had I not had this life changing realization, I decided to do something more fulfilling. Something that would still take effort and dedication, but allow me to dictate my own schedule and help others in the process. Something more fulfilling than working a desk job from 1 to 4 in the morning for the sake of having work experience and for the sake of being at par with my peers. This was Zarabica. Zarabica is something special to me, and I'm sure that each and every one of us has that special thing to us. And for me, it was a nonprofit coffee business that provides sustainable art education to Filipino youth in the hopes that they will be able to break this poverty cycle. So yes, my friends continue to do absolutely incredible things. They found their niche. They found the one uh, activity that brought them joy, but so did I. But I began to follow my own path, developing myself in a different way, allowing me to alleviate all of these demons looming over me and create a really positive impact on my community. In a way, rather than only trying to improve myself, only acquiring accolades for myself and building myself up, overworking myself, I decided to, lift everyone up to improve the lives of my community. Kind of like the quote, the rising tide lifts all boats, that kind of mentality. So the main takeaway here is that there is a lot of pressure to be a certain way and to do a certain thing. And this idea of toxic positivity, we shouldn't lose our individuality and we shouldn't lose ourselves in the process of following the majority to adhere to this societal construct or societal norm. It's going to be hard, it always is, to stay true to yourself when all of these factors and people around you are discouraging you, they aren't doing the same thing. But no matter how hard it is so important to know yourself, to stay true to yourself and be yourself, care about yourself, your health, your own goals, and those who you love. And so that brings me to the end, and I hope that this has helped anyone, even if it's just one person, to kind of realize the pressures that we go through and find something that really brings you joy in life.